Hey everyone, my name is Martin, I'm the lead designer of Taviana The Origins, and today I'd like to give you a little tour of Vedich, which is that small village on the right there, just east of Chernobyl. All you old school Origins mod fans will know where that is, even better than I do. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what we've been up to since the beginning of the year, which is placing nature on the map. As you can see, there's all kinds of beautiful nature around me. And the first thing you probably noticed is that the frame rate is much higher and everything is much smoother overall than it was in the previous videos. And that's because we've also been working on optimization quite a lot. Another thing you'll probably notice is that we've added wind to the vegetation. As somebody commented on the previous video in that abandoned airport that there's no wind on the vegetation. That was absolutely right, and we've added that now, and it looks pretty good if I do say so myself. Another feature I'd like to show you is this beautiful effect we've added to the leaves, but probably not going to see that right now because the sun is too low. What's the time here? 7 o'clock. I should have probably set the time to like 12, but too lazy to do that now. Besides, I've already begun recording, so we'll have to improvise, and I'll show you guys that later when we get into the village. And as I run off into the sunrise here, I'd just like to issue a little disclaimer. All this stuff you're seeing is still work in progress, so stuff is going to change, stuff is going to improve. And if you have any ideas or suggestions, just leave them in the comments below. We try to read all of your comments, and if there's any good suggestions, we'll be sure to take those into consideration. One of those things that we want to improve are textures on the roads. Whoops, there was a little freeze there. As I said, we're still working on the optimization. For all you trolls, you can leave your troll comments about that in the comments below. As I was saying about the roads, we want to add some cracks to the roads, add some plants, you know, make it look a little bit more post-apocalyptic and stuff, but that's something we're going to work on after we're done with the nature, because on a map like Taviana, which is absolutely huge, it's like 625 kilometers squared, which is like 388 miles for our American friends. It's easy to get carried away if you just spend like 3 months working on one village and perfecting it, and then you're like, oh my god, I've spent 3 months on this one village, I've still got the whole map to finish. There we go, another freeze. Come on, there we go. As I said, still working on the optimization. And so we like to work in layers, you know, first we do the landscape, then we add the roads, then we add the houses, miscellaneous objects, nature, and then when there's time left over, we add, you know, all these decorations like cracks and decals and stuff. We find that working this way allows you to better keep track of the progress you're making and better estimate the time you're gonna need to finish the next stage. Talked about cracks in the road, we've already begun adding some of them here. Kind of playing around with it, still not finished, but by the way, there's an Easter egg somewhere on the map here, and the first person to comment into the comments below what that is will get 1 month's free access to the news and the work in progress news. And speaking of work in progress news, if you've been following those, you know we've been working on optimization. By the way, I've disabled the zombies so they don't chase us around when I'm giving you this tour, because that just get annoying. Don't tell Alex or he'll ban me for cheating. But as I was saying, we've been working on optimizing the zombies, which basically means you have to make, I think it's like 4 models for each of these zombies. And each model has like 50% less polygons than the one before it. Those are called, each of those models is called a level of detail. And we have about 6 zombie models, so 6 times 4, that's 24. We had to make 24 models. I think we got done doing that yesterday, so that's something I'm gonna have to see after I get done filming this video, import them into the game and stuff like that. So yeah, 24 models, guys. That stuff isn't done overnight, that takes a bit of time. I think the zombie models look pretty nice. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. We're coming to the first vehicle here. This is called a bukhanka in Russian, which means a loaf of bread, because it kind of looks like a loaf of bread. Look at those god rays coming through the window. Pretty nice, eh? Before we continue, let me just run out into the field. I want to show you that beautiful effect we added to the leaves. I also wanted to show you the sunrise, but it looks like we're a couple of minutes late, the sun has already risen. Well, actually, that's still a pretty beautiful shot there. Let me just run over to this bush here. Ah, there we go, now we can see the effect. Let me just crouch down. So you see how the edges of the bush are a little bit lighter than the middle of the bush? That is called subsurface scattering, and it happens on materials such as candle wax, leaves, skin. So you know, when you put a flashlight under your finger at night, you can see that the edge kind of glows red because light is passing through it, but the middle part is still dark because you have a dense bone that light doesn't pass through there. That's called subsurface scattering, and I think that looks pretty cool. It adds more depth to the scene. So anyway, let me run back into the village. I want to talk to you a little bit about the wrecks of the vehicles we have in game. By the way, some people said in the first video that they don't like the mouse pointer, the one I'm using right now, the dot with the little slanted cross around it. The thing is, guys, there's like 5 of these mouse pointers that you can choose from. There's just the dot itself, you can turn it off, you can have the dot with the cross, just the cross. There's like 5 of them, you can change that, it's no big deal. I just like this one, so that's the one we're going to use for this video. And this is the first vehicle I wanted to show you. This is called a Wartburg. This was made between 1950, was it 1950? Yeah, it was made between 1950 until like 1991 in the East German town of Eisenach. And so you might say, Martin, what's so interesting about this old Soviet scrap heap car? Well, if you're a shameless BMW fanboy like me, there's actually a lot of interesting things about this car, so let me get into it. Automobile production in the city of Eisenach started in 1898 when a factory called Automobilwerk Eisenach was established, and it made a car called Wartburg Wagen, which was named after Wartburg Castle, which overlooks the city. Later on, it got bought by BMW, and in the 1930s, BMW started making a car called the BMW 3/15 DA-3 Wartburg. And thank God that car names have gotten a bit simpler since then. And if you know anything about BMW now, what do you think when you think BMW now? You think of a company that makes some of the best sports cars in the world. Well, the BMW 3/15 DA-3 Wartburg was actually their first ever sports car that they ever made. A lot of people think that the first sports car was like the 3 Series or the 2002. Nope, it was actually the Wartburg. And so after World War II, the Wartburg factory was a part of the Soviet occupation zone, and so the Soviets just kind of carried on making BMWs based on the old World War II blueprints, or the pre-World War II blueprints, and they did that until 1950. They called that company EMW, so not BMW Bayerisch Motor und Werk. They called it EMW Eisenach Motor und Werk. And then in the 1950s, I think they got sued by BMW or something like that. I didn't even know that you could sue a Soviet country, but apparently you could, and they stopped making those, and they began making this car that you see in front of you, the Wartburg. And they just made that with no changes until like 1991, and then they stopped because obviously they couldn't compete with the new, with the West German cars. And there's actually an Opel factory in the city now, so all is not lost. What's this? Ivan? Are you drunk? Ah, god damn it, I have to work with these drunk people all day. The next thing I want to show you is this factory, because the story behind it is very interesting. Igor? Are you drunk too? You son of a bitch, no wonder our country's falling apart, everybody's drunk. I wanted to show you this factory. This factory, I actually discovered it by accident in my neighborhood. I was driving my car this one time, I took a wrong turn, came to this old narrow road, I couldn't do a U-turn to turn around, so I just kept on going straight, and I came to this factory and I was like, wow, this is exactly what I've been looking for, and I've got to add it to the game. So the story of this factory goes, it was established in 1927, sometime around then, by 2 Jewish brothers who actually made porcelain there, so stuff like teapots, teacups, dishes, stuff like that. Then before World War II broke out, they had to flee to a different country for obvious reasons, and production kind of stopped. And then in 1948 the building was heavily damaged by a fire, so production never restarted. And then in the 1950s the communist government used the building as a collective farm, so they kept cows and stuff in the farm until the 1990s. Then in the 1990s, the new democratic government returned that to the state of those two Jewish brothers, but they haven't done anything with the building since because obviously the condition is dilapidated and there's no point. So I'm glad I managed to discover this little gem and save it at least in the game until the government demolishes it, because there's pretty much nothing inside now, just homeless people and stuff sleeping inside. So we've added some Soviet propaganda. This says glory to work. Glory to work, comrades. What's in here? Lockers. We saw those lockers in the previous videos. This is a heavy press and some more communist propaganda. This says glory to the KPSS, which means glory to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. Glory to Soviet Union, my friends. Or comrades, actually. There are no friends, just comrades. The heavy press. The heavy press is an interesting machine. They began being used in World War II by Germany, who used them to create rockets, which were not possible before without heavy presses. And then after World War II, countries like the Soviet Union and the United States of America started their own heavy press program, and they used them to create all these kind of parts for these space stations and rockets and airplanes that we take for granted today, which would not be possible without the heavy press. And there's actually only like 13 of them in the United States. Other countries like France, Russia, China, Japan have them. The biggest one in the United States is called a Mesta, and it has a pushing force of 50,000 tons, which was surpassed by Russia at 75,000 tons, which is absolutely crazy, and recently by China at 80,000 tons. There's a pretty cool documentary about this on YouTube. If you're interested, just search that up. And at the top it says TMZ, which means Taviansky Mashinostроительный Завod, which translates to Taviana Machine Works Factory. You're gonna see this logo on a lot of different machines in game. Let me see if these switchboards have it. No, they don't, but it's gonna be a reoccurring theme. And the next machine I wanted to show you is this. This is called a lathe, and it was invented in 1751 by a Frenchman called Jacques de Vaucanson. And this machine is probably the most important machine ever made, because this machine made every other machine. And the way it works is basically you take like a piece of metal, like a metal block, and you put it into this round part here. This will spin very fast, and then there's a blade on here which will shave off the outer edge until the metal block or wooden block or whatever you put in here becomes perfectly round, and that allows us to make perfectly machined precision machines. All these cars, all this whole high-tech world that we have today wouldn't be possible without this machine. There's the TMZ logo again. And there it is again. So if you ever happen to visit Paris, you can visit a museum called Musée des Arts et des Métiers. The Musée des Arts et Métiers. That was a terrible French accent, but if you ever happen to visit Paris, have a look. You can see the original machine there with all kinds of other machines. And the last car I want to talk to you about is this. This is called a Trabant, which means companion in, I think it's like High German or something. Basically it means companion, and it was named after the Russian satellite Sputnik, which was the first satellite. Sputnik also means companion. This was produced from 1957 until 1990 in the East German city of Zwickau in a factory called Feb Sachsenring. And these cars have a 2-cylinder, 2-stroke engine, basically a motorcycle engine. It only has 5 moving parts, so it's basically indestructible, and the body is made out of plastic. So all these new cars that have like fiberglass and plastic and stuff, nothing new. The East Germans have been doing it since the 1950s. And I remember these cars as a kid living in the Czech Republic. They used to drive past you and they'd make a very distinctive noise like ratatatatata, and then you'd see all kinds of white smoke coming off the exhaust pipe. You couldn't breathe for like 15 minutes when one of these drove past. And basically these cars came about because after World War II, countries needed a people's car, so something cheap, reliable that people could get from point A to B in. West Germany had a Volkswagen Beetle, which was designed by Ferdinand Porsche and Adolf Hitler. Not many people know that. The French had the Citroën 2CV, the British had the Mini Cooper, and the Eastern Bloc came up with the Trabant, the people's car. And automobile manufacturing in the city of Zwickau goes back to before World War II, when the companies Horch, DKW, Audi and Wanderer merged to make a company called Auto Union, which had the 4 Olympic rings, which is still used as Audi's logo today. So next time you see Audi, or if your parents drive an Audi, if you have an Audi, now you know what those 4 rings mean. They represent the companies Horch, DKW, Audi and Wanderer. And after World War II, the factory fell into the Soviet occupation zone again, and they began making Trabants, pretty much with no changes until 1991, when the company or the factory got bought by Volkswagen, and I think they even put like a 1-liter Volkswagen Polo engine into this, but they ceased production in 1991 because obviously these cars couldn't compete with the Western German models. Let's have a look inside here. A lot of people say that we make these cars a little bit too low poly, low detail, but the thing is with these decorative cars, well, they're not really decorative. You're going to be able to get components out of them and stuff, but that's for a whole video. Don't want to talk about that right now. That's for a whole nother video. But still, for the most part, they're decorations. So in big cities like Sabina, Leppestock, you're going to have like 100, 200 of these on the street, so you really don't want to use too much resources on these. In my opinion, it's better to use those resources to make very detailed cars that players drive around in than to spend all those resources on these more decorative vehicles that just stand around. By the way, this is the water pump we saw in the previous videos. You can see it works. For all those people that say this is some kind of elaborate Photoshop, deepfake, Adobe After Effects, whatever foolishness. So yeah guys, that's the story of Balamory. Let us know if you like this kind of video in the comments below. Share, like, subscribe, click the bell icon, you know the drill. Visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/Taviana.origins. Like it so you don't miss any information. Consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/Taviana.origins. And I'll see you guys next time. Auf Wiedersehen.